I should have known the night was doomed the moment he tightened his grip on the steering wheel and said, without even looking at me, that I was lucky to be invited. Lucky. As if stepping into his world was some kind of charity he'd extended out of pity. Then he added the part that stung more than he realized. He didn't want me to embarrass him. The words sat between us like a warning sign flashing in red, and suddenly the quiet hum of the car felt loud enough to bruise. I stared out the window pretending the city lights distracted me, but my chest tightened with the familiar mix of hurt and confusion he always managed to spark. It wasn't the first time he'd said something like that. Around wealthy people, his friends, his family, his colleagues, he acted as if I were some fragile liability he needed to manage. I remembered last year's gala, when he corrected the way I held a champagne glass, or the brunch where he laughed too loudly at a joke someone made about people who grow up without money, then leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't take it personally." Tonight felt like more of the same, but worse somehow. His polite smile never reached his eyes, and the silence between us grew heavier as the estate's winding roads approached. I kept trying to steady my breathing, reminding myself to stay composed, to not give him any reason to think he was right. But deep down, I wondered why I kept shrinking just to fit beside him. Then, as the iron gates came into view and the mansion lights glowed in the distance, a strange chill ran through me. Part dread, part intuition. What I didn't know was that someone at that estate had been looking for me for months. I used to tell myself that love could level any playing field, but walking into his world always made me feel like I was trespassing. His family carried themselves like they were some kind of royalty. Designer clothes for casual dinners, vacations planned around ski resorts and wine tastings, and that smug, subtle way they reminded everyone of their refined taste. Meanwhile, I grew up in a perfectly ordinary home where money was stretched, not thrown around. We fixed things instead of replacing them, celebrated holidays with homemade meals, and valued peace over appearances. I never tried to pretend otherwise, but every time I stood next to them, I felt that quiet pinch inside my chest, that whisper that said, "You don't belong here." One memory always flashes back like a bruise under the skin. A Christmas dinner 2 years ago. I had spent hours picking out a small but thoughtful gift for his mother. I handed it to her with a smile. She accepted it like it was a receipt she hadn't asked for, mumbled, "Thanks," and immediately turned to brag about the bracelet his ex had given her years before. Not a single glance at me, not a single acknowledgement. Just a reminder, subtle but sharp, of who she thought deserved to stand beside her son. I sat through the rest of the evening in silence, smiling politely, telling myself not to make things uncomfortable. Conflict wasn't my style. Keeping the peace was easier. But inside, a different fear was growing. That maybe I was easy to replace. That maybe one day he'd decide I wasn't enough. And that fear is exactly what they depended on. The driveway curved upward like the entrance to another universe, one I was never meant to enter. Crestwood Hills wasn't just a house, it was a monument. Marble pillars soared into the sky, warm lights washed over the stone facade, and a fleet of luxury cars waited for valet service like obedient soldiers. Staff lined the entrance, greeting guests with rehearsed smiles and crisp uniforms. My boyfriend stepped out of the car first, slipping into his polished persona as easily as putting on a coat. When he opened my door, he smiled. A tight, artificial smile. But his hand on my back was cold, guiding rather than welcoming. "Stay close," he muttered through clenched teeth, still smiling for the watching crowd. Inside, everything gleamed. Chandeliers dripping crystals, gold accents on every surface, guests shimmering in gowns and designer suits. I took a steadying breath and tried to blend in, smoothing my dress, straightening my shoulders. But every time I drifted near a cluster of high-status guests, politicians, CEOs, socialites, he subtly redirected me, a hand on my arm, a whispered, "Not there." Always polite, always controlled, always keeping me at the edges. I wasn't sure whether to feel protected or hidden. As we approached the banquet hall, a hostess in a sleek black dress paused mid-greeting. Her eyes flicked to my face. Once, then again. A strange hesitation crossed her expression, like she was trying to place me. Or like she already had. Before I could ask, my boyfriend stepped between us, blocking her view. "Come on," he said sharply, steering me forward. The hostess's gaze followed us for a moment too long. A quiet, subtle chill moved through me. Something about this place, or these people, was off. The grand ballroom was a symphony of wealth, every chandelier dripping light, every guest coated in the kind of confidence that comes from money passed down through generations. As we stepped inside, a subtle hush rippled through the room. Not rude, not mocking, just aware. Eyes turned toward me with an almost curious interest. But I didn't interpret curiosity. I interpreted judgment. I tugged lightly at the strap of my dress, suddenly convinced it looked cheaper under the chandelier's unforgiving glow. My boyfriend leaned toward me, whispering through his perfect social smile. "Relax. Just try not to talk too much, all right? I don't want you saying something weird." The words hit like a slap wrapped in silk. His friends floated over. 3 men in tailored suits and 2 women dripping diamonds. Their laughter was soft, elegant, and edged with something sharp. "Oh, this is her?" one woman said, her smile never reaching her eyes. Another added, "She's cute. Very down to earth." The way she said down to earth made it sound like dirt. I felt myself shrinking, folding inward as if apologizing for taking up space. I tried to smile politely, but each comment scraped against my nerves. In my head, a quiet mantra repeated, "Don't embarrass him. Don't embarrass him." While the group launched into stories about ski resorts, art auctions, and summering in Barcelona, I stood at my boyfriend's side like an accessory he wasn't sure matched his outfit. The wealth in the room pressed against me like a physical weight. Families moved in tight, glittering clusters, brushing past me without seeing me. I wasn't just out of place. I was invisible. And yet, through the crowd, I felt gazes still lingering on me. Not cold, not mocking, almost expectant, as if they were waiting. I was standing near a towering floral arrangement, pretending to study the petals so I wouldn't have to meet anyone's eyes, when I noticed a man across the room watching me with unsettling focus. Middle-aged, flawlessly tailored suit, the kind of presence that made people step aside without realizing it. He leaned toward the event host, a graceful woman in a satin gown, and whispered something while subtly gesturing in my direction. Her reaction was immediate. Her eyes widened, not in disapproval, but in surprise, recognition, maybe even relief. Before I could interpret it, my boyfriend appeared at my side, fingers tightening around my arm just enough to sting. "What did you do?" he muttered, teeth clenched behind his grin. "Seriously, don't start anything weird. These are important people." "I didn't do anything," I whispered back, heat rising in my cheeks. But he wasn't listening. He never listened. He was too busy panicking over a scenario he didn't understand. The host and the suited man began making their way toward us, or rather, toward me. I felt my boyfriend straighten, preparing his charm like a shield. When they stopped in front of us, the host didn't even look at him. She looked directly at me, her expression warm and unmistakably sincere, as if she already knew me. My boyfriend cleared his throat, stepping forward as though she might have confused us. "Hi, I'm..." She gently cut him off without ever shifting her gaze away from me. Hello, you must be her. Her? I echoed, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. The suited man nodded, his voice low but brimming with certainty. We've actually been waiting to meet you. The host's smile softened in a way that felt almost unreal, like she was greeting an old friend instead of someone who'd spent the last hour trying not to disappear into the wallpaper. I can't believe we finally get to meet you, she said. Your work has been the talk of our board for months. My work? I repeated, stunned. The suited man stepped forward. Your community healthcare initiative, the mobile clinics you designed for underserved neighborhoods. We've reviewed every detail. It's brilliant. Truly groundbreaking. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. Those clinics were something I'd built quietly, stitching together grants, volunteer teams, and late-night planning sessions. My boyfriend had always rolled his eyes at them. It's cute, he'd said once, but nobody important cares about that stuff. But here, in this gleaming estate among people who supposedly measured worth in carats and connections, the room had fallen silent. Guests nearby turned toward us, their expressions shifting with recognition as the host continued. You've solved problems our foundation has been struggling with for years, she said. Your designs for rapid deployment medical tents? Genius. We've been studying them in preparation for our next global relief partnership. My throat tightened. I had never heard my work described with so much respect. My boyfriend stood beside me, frozen. His mouth opened slightly, then closed, like he couldn't decide if he should speak or pretend he wasn't involved with me at all. His hand dropped from my arm, suddenly unsure, suddenly small. The suited man extended a hand to me, not him. You've changed lives, he said simply. People here want to thank you. In that moment, I realized the truth. I wasn't the one out of place in this room. He was. Almost immediately, the energy in the room shifted. Guests who had barely glanced at me before now edged closer, curiosity turning into genuine interest. Questions came fast. How did I manage the clinics? How did I secure funding so efficiently? Who were my collaborators? Each inquiry felt like a spotlight, illuminating every detail of the work I had poured myself into for years. A philanthropist, tall and commanding, smiled when I mentioned a recent article profiling my program. I read about this, he said. I've been meaning to reach out. Incredible work. My heart raced, a mix of disbelief and satisfaction washing over me. These were the same people my boyfriend had assumed would never care about me, the same circles where I was not enough. Then a matriarch of one of the wealthiest families in the room approached and, without hesitation, offered me a seat beside her at the VIP table. You belong here, she said softly, as if reading my thoughts. My boyfriend's lips parted in protest, trying to interject, but each attempt was met with polite dismissal. His usual charm, the one he relied on to control every interaction, failed him completely. I realized then, with a quiet thrill, that the balance had shifted. The power I had thought belonged to him, the invisible control he exercised over the room and me, was gone. I was no longer the outsider. For the first time that night, I felt seen, acknowledged, and unexpectedly in charge. It was only the beginning. I followed the hostess down a corridor lined with soft golden light, my heels clicking against the polished marble floor. At the end of it waited a long, elegant table, perfectly set with crystal glasses, polished silverware, and floral arrangements that seemed almost alive. This was a space reserved for people who dictated influence, decisions, and reputations. And somehow, inexplicably, I had been invited. My boyfriend's face twisted as he realized he wasn't on the list. He stepped forward, frowning, trying to argue, insisting he belonged there. The staff, impeccably professional, smiled politely, and shook their heads. "I'm sorry, sir. Your seat isn't reserved for this table." He muttered something under his breath, a mix of frustration and disbelief, and backed away. From across the room, his eyes followed me, a glare sharpened by embarrassment. I took my seat beside a philanthropist whose foundation I had admired for years, a CEO whose company had sponsored several initiatives I had once applied to, and an ambassador who had spoken at conferences I'd attended. Their attention was on me, not him. They asked questions, listened intently, and hung on my every word. As I realized the weight of their recognition, a slow, steady warmth spread through me. This was the first time all evening that I truly understood my own worth. Not through his approval, not through fitting into his world, but through the acknowledgement of people who mattered on a scale far beyond my small insecurities. For the first time that night, I wasn't an accessory. I was the guest everyone had been waiting to meet. The lights dimmed slightly, drawing attention to the grand stage at the front of the room. The host stepped forward, microphone in hand, and began speaking, her voice warm but commanding. "Tonight, we want to honor someone whose work has not only inspired our foundation, but has changed lives across communities. Ms. Tasi Iyik's initiative has set the standard for what compassionate, innovative action can achieve." My breath caught as a slideshow flickered to life behind her. Photos of mobile clinics, smiling children receiving care, and bustling community centers filled the screens. Each image told a story of dedication, of sleepless nights, of victories quietly won. Applause rippled through the room, heartfelt and appreciative, and I felt my chest swell with a mix of pride and disbelief. I hadn't even noticed him step forward until he was beside me, attempting to interject, to claim a fraction of the recognition for himself. "I helped coordinate," he began, voice pitched in that rehearsed charm he thought would work. The host didn't flinch. She looked directly at him, calm but firm. "We're speaking with Ms. A. Sho." His face paled, lips pressed into a thin line as the room collectively shifted their attention back to me. Guests who had once barely noticed me now watched intently, their expressions open with admiration. He lingered for a moment, frozen in place, powerless, realizing for the first time that the control he always assumed he had was gone. For the second time that evening, the balance had shifted. This time, completely. The room knew it. He knew it. And I, finally, was fully seen. During intermission, the room hummed with quiet conversation and the clinking of glasses, but I felt a sudden pressure beside me. He leaned in, voice low and hurried, eyes darting nervously around the room. "I'm sorry," he said, though the words felt rehearsed. I didn't want people to judge you. You know how these circles are." I stared at him, seeing the same pattern I had ignored for years. Every slight, every warning, every helpful correction. It wasn't about protecting me. It was about controlling appearances, about his fear of being embarrassed. His insecurity disguised as superiority had been the chain holding me back. "You've always said that," I said quietly, letting the words hang. "Always pretending it's about me, when it's really about you." He swallowed, frustrated, and tried another angle. "Look, I want you to come with me. Let's leave. People are staring. I don't want this to get out of hand." I shook my head slowly, feeling a calm clarity I hadn't felt all evening. I had stopped shrinking. I had stopped apologizing for existing. The room, the guests, the admiration, it wasn't his to take away. "I'm not leaving," I said, voice steady. "You can stay if you want, but this is where I belong tonight." He blinked, disbelief flashing across his face. For once, the control he so desperately clung to had slipped, and I realized, with a quiet thrill, that I didn't need him to see me to be seen. I was already standing in the spotlight. As the evening continued, I was approached by one guest after another, each conversation lifting me higher than I had ever felt in his world. A philanthropist discussed potential collaborations, asking for details I had only whispered about in past meetings. A tech CEO praised the innovative approach I had taken, insisting he wanted to bring my methods to other regions. Each compliment, each genuine question, chipped away at the invisible walls I had built to stay small beside him. A powerful family matriarch, one of the most respected in the city, asked for my direct contact. "We want to support your next project," she said warmly, handing me her card. The weight of her attention, her respect, grounded me in a clarity I hadn't realized I'd lost. I thought of all the times I had dimmed myself, muted my voice, softened my ambitions, smiled politely while he took credit for my ideas. I had been trained to believe my value depended on how comfortable I made him feel, but tonight, surrounded by people who valued me for who I truly was, I felt a shift deep inside. My name, my work, my intelligence, it was worth more than his fragile pride. I smiled, a genuine, unrestrained smile, for the first time that evening. The insecurity that had clung to me for years melted, replaced with something stronger, brighter, and entirely my own. I wasn't just being seen, I was being recognized. And for the first time, I understood what it meant to stand fully in my own power. Outside, the night air was cool and fragrant, fairy lights strung across the driveway twinkling like silent witnesses. He grabbed my arm gently but insistently, eyes pleading in a way that was both familiar and pathetic. "Please," he said, voice low and desperate, "give me another chance. I'll fix it. I'll change. I just, I want to make this right." I looked at him calmly, feeling the weight of the evening settle into clarity. Every insult, every belittling comment, every subtle attempt to control me flashed through my mind. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. "No, I've seen the pattern. You've disrespected me for years, disguised it as care, and I'm done. This ends here." His face twisted in disbelief, then anger. "You're nothing without me," he shouted, the words cutting through the soft murmur of guests around us. Several influential figures walking past froze, their attention drawn instantly. I felt a quiet satisfaction as I realized they were hearing him for exactly what he was: small, insecure, and exposed. Before he could continue, one of the guests, a philanthropist I'd just spoken with, stepped forward. "Miss Key, allow us," he said politely, gesturing toward a sleek limousine waiting nearby. Other guests nodded in agreement, offering me a ride home. I stepped back, untangling myself from his grasp, and smiled. The night belonged to me now. For the first time, I was free of him, free of his judgment, and moving forward with people who saw and valued me for who I truly was. Back in my apartment, the city lights stretched below me, sparkling like a mirror of the night I'd just lived. I leaned against the balcony railing, letting the cool breeze wash over my skin, my heart still buzzing from everything that had happened. The applause, the attention, the recognition, it all felt surreal, like I had stepped into a life I'd only dreamed of while shrinking beside him. My phone buzzed constantly, emails from estate members praising my work, thanking me for attending, and expressing excitement for future collaborations flooded in. Text messages chimed with invitations to events, offers to fund upcoming projects, and personal notes of admiration. Each one reinforced the truth I had been denying for so long. I belonged here, not in the shadows of someone else's ego. Then came the notifications from him. Angry, jealous messages, trying to twist the evening into some imagined humiliation for him, some attempt to reclaim control. I read the first few and then deleted them all, the action calm, deliberate, final. He no longer had a place in my world. I stepped back from the balcony, taking one last look at the lights that mirrored the glow in my chest. I realized how far I had come, from being invisible, underestimated, and controlled, to standing fully in my own power. A quiet, satisfied smile spread across my face. He told me not to embarrass him, but tonight, he only embarrassed himself. And for the first time, I didn't need anyone to see my worth. I already knew.